name is Mengistab Iyasu Mendal. I am Eritrean. I was born in Eritrea and I studied in Keren Middle School. And I was taught by Peace Corps. My teacher's name was Terry Moon. Terry Moon.
Terry Moon?
Yes. I think he was from Chicago, Illinois. And he taught me about Chicago and how it was developing. And he taught me about the history about the United States. And at that time, I improved my English because he's American and he taught me English language. But the problem in Eritrea, we were taught by different teachers, so we were not able to speak the dialect because some of them, they have English dialects and some American. So all the time we cannot pronounce as what we want to pronounce. So it was beneficiary that we were taught by Peace Corps in Eritrea at that time, and I have a good experience, and I have achieved a good experience from my teacher, Mr. Terry Moon from Chicago, and that's all what I know.
My name is Burhane. Burhane, last name is Kiflom. I am from Eritrea, Asmara, and as I remember, my Peace Corps teachers was in middle school in Asmara, and you know, my memory is not as good as used to be. I cannot remember my teacher's name. We had two Peace Corps teachers at that time, and that was, if I am correct, was in 1965 during President Kennedy. And you know, by the Peace Corps teachers and by President Kennedy was a good friend of the emperor at that time, and we was getting a lot of help, like short pants, t-shirts, and milks, and a lot of help from. So we was excited teenage at that time. Then I went to my high school. I went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and at 9th grade and 10th grade also I had Peace Corps teachers. The one I remember is in American Institute, but our director name I never forget, Mr. Talbot. And also we had a great influence about to learn English, and especially in high school, you know, we can speak and understand English well. So when we came to United States, you know, we came as a refugee status, but we didn't have no problem to communicate and maybe to put some application and all that. That's I remember with my Peace Corps teachers. Yeah.
And you remember Mr. Talbot's name? Do you remember any stories about Mr. Talbot?
Mr. Talbot was, I think, during Emperor Haile Selassie, when the Italians invade the Ethiopia during the wartime, when he came to United States, United Nations, asking help, I think Dr. Talbot was one of the supporter. He was picketing to help the emperor, and he did a lot of help. So the emperor was very grateful about what he done, and he made him open this American school in Addis Ababa, and he was a director of that school. That's how I remember the history, how he came to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Yeah.
I'm Vince Radke. I served in Ethiopia from 1970 to 1974. I was part of the smallpox eradication program at the time and assigned to Kaffa province, and the town I was assigned to was Jima. Most of my time, again, was spent in Kaffa province. Very few roads in Ethiopia back then. We were able to drive maybe 150 kilometers on the roads, and then after that, it was either walk, looking for cases of smallpox and vaccinating, or else on muleback. I enjoyed the mule a little bit, but I more enjoyed the walking. So I got to see a lot of the province of Kaffa in my 3.5 years there. I had an Ethiopian counterpart by the name of Ato Fakada Gabri Selassie. I worked very closely with him. He was a sanitarian at the health department in Jima, and we worked very closely together on the smallpox program. We also had shared many evenings together underneath a tent, underneath the stars in Ethiopia. So it was thoroughly enjoyed my time with him.
Have you had any contact with him after?
I did. I was able to stay in contact with him through letters for about the first 5-6 years after I left Ethiopia. At the time I left Ethiopia in 1974, Emperor Haile Selassie was starting to lose his power, and there were some changes in the government of Ethiopia at the time, and communications at that time, at least sending aerograms or letters, were becoming more and more difficult. And I remember one letter he sent, he told me that, Vince, he says, you know, your letters are going to be read, maybe opened. But I continued to communicate. And then I'm not sure who sent the last letter, but I remember that letters from Ethiopia kind of stopped. I also adopted an Ethiopian high school student when I was there and stayed in contact with him for a number of years after I left. But just like Ato Fakada Gabri Selassie, I lost contact with that student also, and have never been able to reestablish contact. Hope someday to go back to Ethiopia. I have a very good Peace Corps friend, Jean Bartley, who is still there, married an Ethiopian woman, and started a small business there in Addis Ababa, the capital. So I'm hoping maybe 2013 or 2014 to go back and visit him.
Hi there, I'm Alan Olson. I'm a very proud returned Peace Corps volunteer. And we landed in Ethiopia. And Peace Corps actually was very good at saying, it's been a tough time, and so why don't you just figure out what you want to do? And we eventually looked around and said, gee, you know, this Ethiopia is kind of an interesting place. Can you find some professional jobs for us there? Because we'd already decided we were going to extend our time. And so I taught electronics, and my wife taught pharmacy there for the Ethiopians.
My name is David Douglas. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ethiopia from 1973 to 1975. My site was a very small town by the name of Hirna, which was more in kind of towards the southeastern part of the country. We had electricity in the evening only for about 4 hours. I lived way out at the end of the line, so a 100 watt light bulb burned with the intensity of a 60 watt light bulb. My primary function, my primary role there was as a junior secondary teacher in the school there. I taught 7th and 8th grade English, math, and social studies. Before I go on, I would like to dedicate this time with you to my site mate, who was there for only a year, from 74 to 75. Due to the turmoil in the country at the time, there were no new volunteers brought into the country, and those who had come in 74 were only allowed to stay a year, and they were given the opportunity to transfer to another country. My site mate's name was Ben Gamber. He transferred to Kenya, and in 76 he tragically drowned while he was there. He was a wonderful, very friendly, intuitive person. He was raised by missionary parents. They were Mennonite missionaries who lived in a town nearby, and we would visit them from time to time. He knew the language Amharic fluently, and we got along very well. We helped each other out and did many things together.
Clark Sand. We were in Arbaminch, Yamagolfa, 73 to 75.
Ethiopia. Ethiopia.
Oh, sorry, Ethiopia.
Don Morrison. I was in Ethiopia from 1974 to 1976. The first year I was in Dedar, which is in Hargey province, and the second year I was in Gedo, which is in Shoa province. Well, certainly our beginning of our Peace Corps experience was an adventure. We were supposed to get a cable when we arrived in Germany, not to proceed. The Emperor Haile Selassie was in power at the time, but there was a creeping coup, they called it, and it was considered not safe for us to continue, but we did not get that cable, so we arrived in Addis Ababa, and they didn't expect us because they weren't sure about it. Well, 60 volunteers had arrived, and so we proceeded with our training, and it was an incredible, memorable, fabulous experience. Living through a revolution.
My name is Jim Cairns, and I was in India in 1961 to 63. I also served from 95 to 97 in Eritrea, and I was also a industrial trainer in a technical institute. Thank you.
Cairns. I was in India in 1961 to 63. First India group. I returned to the Peace Corps in 1995 to 97 to Eritrea. I taught in Asmara in a teacher training institute for elementary teachers. Thank you.
My name's Rebecca Beauregard. I served in Ethiopia 2009 to 2011, and the town I served in was Mota.